you're here. Peter and I are glad you are watching this lesson from God's Word. Boys and girls, God's Word is the most important thing you can learn from. I hope you make it important. We've been talking about David, and poor David. We're almost, in a sense, just beginning, and we're already on part number 4 of King Saul trying to kill David, and yet there's still more to come. We're picking up in chapter 19 of 1 Samuel. Well, we had left off with David. His life was being hunted. He'd escaped to King Saul. His wife, Michal, had helped to protect him when the spies had come to kill him, and Saul was angry with Michal over this. Well, David has sought refuge with Samuel. And do you think Saul's going to find him? I mean, it's not the age of the internet, and somebody can't pick up their iPhone and call him. But the Bible tells us that somebody came and they told Saul. They came, you maybe even think of somebody like coming and whispering in your ear and telling you, whoa, wait, somebody ratted out David. Somebody went to King Saul and said, hey, we know where he's hiding. He's with Samuel. And I mean, I'm sure King Saul was like, okay, whatever. No, King Saul's like, let's get him. Let's go after him. We have to get him. So King Saul sends a group of messengers to go get David. In 1 Samuel 19, verse 20, it says, and Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. So he sends a group. He says, you go get David. And they go to get David, and you can maybe picture it kind of sort of like they walk in on a church service and just join in. Would have been a little different in the Old Testament, but I'm trying to think of something you can relate to, okay? So they show up, they see that what's going on there with Samuel, and the Spirit of God comes on them, and they join right in. They do what Samuel's doing and what David's doing, and they become a part of it. Did they do what Saul sent them to do? No, because God is more powerful than Saul is. Well, that happened with that group. So do you think Saul stops there and says, okay, God's more powerful? No. Saul's not a quick learner. Saul's anger has taken him over. Saul's anger controls him, and he really doesn't think very logically. Okay, verse number 21, and when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. So the second group did the same. Verse 21, and Saul sent messengers again, the third time, and they prophesied also. So finally Saul's like, all right, I sent group 1, and they just started to take place in the prophesying. I sent group 2, they did the same. I sent group 3, they did the same thing. So what should Saul do now? Well, 1, he should probably stop, but we know he's not going to. He says, all right, then I'm going to go myself. I'm going to go see. So Saul starts off on this journey. He's going to go by himself, or on his own, not by himself, but on his own himself. He's going to go, and he's going to try to get David. Well, he stops. The Bible tells us he stops at a well and basically asks for directions. Says, where can I find Samuel? Because, yeah, he's kind of lost. He's got to figure out where Samuel is. And the people at the well tell him where to go. Verse number 23 says, and he went thither to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him also. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. So Saul does the same thing. The Spirit of God comes on him and he starts prophesying. Again, you can kind of picture like joining in on a church service. He shows up, and instead of taking David captive, he starts worshiping God as well. So the Spirit of God has come upon Saul also. So Saul has tried many different ways, many different avenues to get to David, and he still has not been successful at getting to David. Verse number 24 goes on to tell us about Saul and his worship while he's there. It tells us that he worshiped with Samuel all day and all night. He spends time worshiping God. The mighty power of God yet again is protecting David. Boys and girls, we've been, again, part 4. That means 4 weeks of talking about this, and we had that week at camp in the middle. Well over a month, we've been talking about how God has protected David. Can you see that, boys and girls? Can you see the mighty power of God? Boys and girls, God's stronger than you are. God's stronger than Peter is. God's stronger than I am. God's stronger than Peter and I together. God is so strong, boys and girls, so powerful. And he sees the future. He sees the beginning and the end. That powerful God, do you believe in him? Do you trust in him for your big needs and your small needs? Do you run to him with your prayer requests? I hope so, boys and girls. When things come up this week, I hope you'll run to Christ. You'll run to God in prayer and say, God, I need your protection like David, or I need your provision. God, I need you, because God's listening to hear from you. We'll look forward to seeing you next week, boys and girls, and seeing what